I'm just like, how many shots in a row? 6 or 7 shots in a row. I'm really drunk. I was calling Atkins more than he is so long. Don't forget looking around with him more than he is so long. I'm drunk. He's not. End of message.
My name is Barry Adkins, and I'm not the right guy to be here telling you this story. I'm only here because my son Kevin passed away due to alcohol poisoning at 18 years old.
Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of the Arise podcast. I'm here with my guest, Barry Adkins. Barry has a powerful story and also a story of tragedy, but how he turned that pain into purpose. So, Barry, I do want to thank you for coming onto the podcast and for this opportunity.
Well, thanks for having me on, Peter.
And Barry, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from originally, just a little background about you.
A little bit of background. I actually grew up in Kalispell, Montana. It's up in the northwest corner of the state by Glacier Park. I lived in a small town, lived a very sheltered life in a small town back in the 60s and 70s. Ended up working on fishing boats in Alaska. Actually took a boat up the Inside Passage way before GPS was a thing. So it was a pretty big challenge. But I realized that I probably needed to do something else because it's a dangerous business, just like Alaska's deadliest catch. It's dangerous business. So I came down to Arizona and went to a trade school, and I've been in Arizona since 1979.
Awesome. Congratulations on the retirement.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
It's hard to believe. You'll get there someday. Believe it or not, you get there eventually.
It feels like a very long time away right now. I know time moves fast, so I'm pretty sure that it flew by looking back for you, right?
Yes, it did. And the best advice I give people is this isn't a sprint. This isn't a 5K or a 10K or a marathon. Life is an ultra marathon. You just got to take your time because a lot of things happen.
Yeah. And I think it's like a marathon with a lot of bumps on the road, a lot of unexpected turns and twists, especially in the world we live in today. Burnout is so common because people just want to get to the shiny object, to the shiny house. There's like this imaginary place they want to get to, that they've made it, even though that place doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't. And it's, as I like to say, if you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans. Because the shifts you're going to see, you're not going to see them coming.
Yeah.
You are not going to see them coming.
I used to be a big goal setter, and I used to just plan out every aspect of my life. And I realized that, like you said, you can make all the plans that you want, but ultimately life is unpredictable. And sometimes God's plans are higher than our own, and we don't have control over everything. That's just the reality.
No, that is correct. He sometimes he chooses to have you do something that you're sitting there thinking, wait, what? Why? What am I doing this?
Yeah. And to dive into probably one of the biggest twists and turns that you've had that's been an obstacle. I know that you lost your son due to an alcohol incident. If you could just talk a little bit about that.
So I'll tell you a little bit about it. So Kevin had graduated from high school. I remember at the high school graduation, he gave me a hug and thanked me for not giving up on him. He got a job right out of high school, and I agreed to co-sign a loan. He wanted to buy a new truck. And I made him give me 3 months worth of insurance payments and car payments before I would co-sign that loan, right? Because I don't want to be on the hook for it. It's his deal, not mine. And I'm hoping he'll find a truck at a private party from a private party, and I'll go down to the credit union, sign papers, and be out of there in 5 minutes. He found one at a dealership. And I have a healthy dislike for that process, right? Because I know they're going to try to sell me stuff I don't want or need.
Mm-hmm.
I go into the dealership, sit down in the financial guy's office. The first thing that guy said to me is, how about some life insurance? And I'm like, look, dude, I'm not here for life insurance. I don't need any life insurance. My wife will do just fine if something happens to me. And he said, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about your son. I'm that guy. I'm that guy who rather indignantly told him that 18-year-old boys don't die. But I was wrong. They do die. He wouldn't live long enough to make a single payment on that truck. So he's graduated from high school. He's got money in the bank. He's got a new truck. He's 18 years old. He wants to move out because he's tired of the old man telling him what to do. Because I made him do all those terrible things like come in and wake me up when you get home, that kind of stuff. And I remember him coming into our living room one day, and he sat down in this brown chair that sits in front of a big picture window. And he started talking about how he couldn't believe his life was finally beginning, and he wanted to move out. And I did my best to discourage him because, honestly, we really never had any problems with him. His high school principal didn't even know who he was. And I considered that a good thing. But I didn't have any luck talking him out of it. So a couple weeks later, him and his buddy Craig started the process of moving him out. He's 18 years old. He threw a bed, a TV, and a dresser in the back of his truck, and that's his definition of moving out. And he came back in and came in the living room, and he told me something I've never forgotten. He said he wasn't going to take his toothbrush with him. He'd be back tomorrow and grab it. I walked out front with him like I normally do, gave him a hug, told him that I loved him and to be careful, watched him drive away. It was the last time I saw him alive. That night, his friends decided to throw a little housewarming party. Started with a keg of beer and moved on to shots. He left a voicemail for his sister that night, and if you listened to it, you'd think, well, it's a bunch of drunk kids just having fun. But shortly after he left that voicemail, he passed out, and the people at the party put him in his bed on his side in case he vomited. The party was still going on. They actually went in and shaved his head and his legs while he was passed out. But his buddy Craig was worried about him. Around 4 a.m., calls started coming into 911. First calls were difficulty breathing. Next calls were not breathing. My son died alone in a hospital while I slept peacefully in my bed. The next morning was Sunday morning. My wife and I are sitting around drinking coffee, talking about what we're going to do or not do that day. At about 8:30 in the morning, the doorbell rings. And we're looking at each other because we weren't expecting company. And I open the door, and I see 2 police officers and somebody in plain clothes at my front door. Should have been a big red flag, right? It should have been, but I'm that guy. It didn't even occur to me that something bad had happened. I actually joked with them as they came in, thinking this had to have something to do with a dog or a parked car. I had nothing. But they didn't laugh at any of my jokes. One of the officers and the person in plain clothes stayed by the front door. The other officer walked in and stood in front of that brown chair that Kevin had sat in 2 weeks before and talked about how his life was finally beginning. He said there'd been an accident. Your son is dead. We asked who because we have a number of children. They said it was Kevin, and they handed me his driver's license. There's something pretty final about it when a police officer hands you your child's driver's license. Because until that exact moment in time, you're holding out hope. You're holding out hope that this is all just a big mistake. You've misspelled the last name. Get out of here. You need to be next door, right? Any place but my place.
Yeah.
But when they hand you your child's driver's license, you know he's gone and he's never coming back.
Wow. So at that moment when you said that you weren't that guy in that moment, I think it's natural to for that to not be the first thing you jump to. But if you could talk a little bit more about what do you mean by not being that guy, or like, are you referring to not thinking it would ever happen to you, like that mindset?
That's the mindset. It just something, it's like that guy trying to sell me insurance. You need some
Mm,
insurance on your son. No, I don't. That's not gonna, because that kind of stuff don't happen to me.
yeah,
Right. And it's just something, you would think that it would be a big red flag when there's two police officers and somebody in plain clothes at your front door. You would think that, but like I said, that's not my mindset. I didn't think, oh my gosh, what happened? I didn't think that way then, and I really don't think that way today.
yeah. And I think like even even myself, or I don't know, you see all these horrible things that happen in the news. There's so many things that happen on a daily basis, and you never for a second like think that it can, happen to you. Um, so I think that's a big like thing that we need to realize is like this can happen to anyone, you know? Um, now with Kevin, tell us a little bit more about like your relationship with him, kind of like before this happened. Like,
My relationship with him was really good. We really never had any problems with him. He was very much part of Future Farmers of America. That's kind of how he got through high school because he wasn't a very good student. He was about going out in the woods and riding his motorcycle or whatever and driving pickup trucks. And he rode mules with a neighbor and actually raised pigs in the FFA, which really stink, by the way.
nice. So he was very outdoorsy.
Yeah.
Got got it. Okay. I'm sure like there's a lot of parents that are sending their kids to college. Now with social media too, like there's other dangers and things like that. What would you recommend to a parent based off, that situation, or that parent that maybe thinks like, hey, yeah, that's a sad story, but it can't happen to me. What's a little bit of a reality check to help them, because a lot of people, this can help them because it's also like preventative in a way. Even though you can't fully control things, but at least being aware that these things exist, these dangers exist.
Well, these dangers do exist. And nobody ever believes it's going to happen to them, just like me. You just never believe that. And, we can talk about ways that parents can talk to their children about drugs and alcohol. But I have one very simple thing for them to keep in mind. Whatever you do, don't wait until it's too late.
Like letting them know about the dangers.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody thinks, well, I'll take care of it later, or I'll talk to him about it next week. And I'm hard pressed to imagine you can talk to him about it too much. And here's the thing is, I'm not here to advocate that we go back to the days of prohibition and, nobody can
Yeah,
drink, right?
yeah.
No, 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 no. Um, I'm advocating to wait until you're 21 because I promise you, you won't regret it.
Hmm.
The younger they start drinking, the more likely it is to become a problem.
Yep.
And just wait. You think you're missing out on something? You're not. I know there's a lot of peer pressure, but the reality is peer pressure is always going to be there. After high school, it's going to be different people pushing you to do things you may or may not want to do, right? Peer pressure can be good, but it can be bad also. And for me, obviously, I'm, 2 generations apart from that. But the thing is, the people you think you need to impress when you're in high school, in a lot of cases, within a few years of being out of high school, you might have them as friends on Facebook or Twitter or, whatever, but you're not going to be around them anymore. These people you think you need to impress, they're not going to be part of your life. They're part of your high school life. But after high school, things change. I talked to a friend that I went to DeVry. I still talk to a couple of those guys, and I talked to one guy from my high school class. One.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because you see what I'm saying? These people you think you need to impress, not so much.
No, and high school's only 4 years. And if you think
Yeah.
about life, like 4 years is nothing. I played high school baseball. So I considered myself to have like a lot of friends from high school. Honestly, I don't think I talk to any of them
Well,
anymore.
that's what I was going to ask you. You're pretty
Yeah,
young,
yeah,
but
yeah.
um, typically it's a few people,
Hmm.
maybe. But in general, when I speak at schools, I always ask the teachers that question, and most of the time there's two or three, maybe. Some of it's only one, just a few people. So, these people you think you need to impress, that just isn't true.
And talking about peer pressure, like I've noticed that because especially like with my culture, my family's from Dominican Republic, and I think it's just part of a lot of cultures where alcohol is not seen as a thing that you can be pressured into. It's like, oh, have a drink. Um, I know that me growing up, I was like, yeah, I said no to drugs, I said no to weed and all these things, but I guess your brain doesn't associate growing up in that culture like alcohol being a bad thing. But I'm starting to see now where I've seen alcoholism prevalent in my family. And like you said, at 18 years old, 17 years old, I forget the science around it, but our things our prefrontal cortex, it's
Yeah,
not
it isn't fully developed. Yeah.
isn't fully developed either. So definitely I feel like with alcohol, people are a little bit less frown upon it as much as, maybe weed or some of the other drugs. Would do you see that like in your work today that people are a little bit more focused on saying no to those other drugs, but not necessarily alcohol?
That is correct because it's such a prevalent part of our society. Kids start seeing advertisements for alcohol when they're old enough to watch a football game with you,
Mm. Yep.
right?
Yep.
Um, again, I'm not here to tell you that you should never drink. I'm a one beer guy at home, right?
Me too.
But I just if you want to be in control, when you're a six pack in, you're not the one in control. That six pack's in control. And really bad decisions. It's considered in a lot of people consider it a gateway drug because
Hmm.
when you're sober, you'd say, well, I'd never try these other things. But after you're a six pack in, somebody offers you something and there you are. And it's when it becomes a problem, it's exceedingly difficult to get rid of. It's easy to start, but the rehab industry, I actually looked this up a while back. The rehab industry for drugs and alcohol, $35 billion a year.
Wow. So we have like the recovery, but we're not getting to the root of the
We're
of the
not getting to
problem.
the prevention. The best analogy I like to give people is you walk into a house and the faucet's just spraying water everywhere. And there's
Hmm.
15 people with rags and mops trying to wipe up that water, but nobody's over at the faucet trying to shut the faucet off. Right? I mean,
That's so true.
that's
Yeah.
what it is. Everybody's trying to clean up the mess that happened after, but nobody has shut the water off. And we got to shut the water off. That's why my focus is prevention.
And I think just kind of hearing your story, I know with me, like I'm a super light drinker. Um, I'm the type of guy with a couple beers and things start getting a little fuzzy. So I'm
I don't like
very
it.
so with me, that's why I'm like you. I'm like a one beer guy, maybe a glass of wine with steak, but I just know
Yeah.
how it affects me. listening to Kevin's story. So it was alcohol poisoning, but I doing some research, I realized that the alcohol level was it was elevated, but it wasn't super elevated. If you could just kind of talk a little bit more about that.
Well, that's kind of the tricky part. His BAC was 0.36%, which is
Point three
pretty
six.
elevated. But as the coroner said, there's people walking the streets every day, alcoholics, that have a higher BAC than that. And
Yep.
everybody's BAC, the tolerance is different. A lot depends upon your body and how your body metabolizes this alcohol and that kind of stuff. The coroner said that she had seen as low as 0.24% kill specifically teenagers because everybody's body is a little bit different and it handles it differently. And you just don't know when someone's passed out. You don't know how much trouble they're in. You just don't.
Yeah.
And if you think you'd be the first person to call 911 or take somebody to an emergency room because of that, it happens every single day at every single hospital. It happens daily where people get taken in or someone calls 911. And all I can tell you is I guarantee you this is a night Craig will never forget.
Yeah, no, I think in my opinion, and I think it's still okay for people to have a drink here and there, but I honestly do think that alcohol is just toxic to the body and to the mind. Um, and that's why like even a little bit, right? Because everyone's tolerance is different, but I just think that some people can maybe tolerate the the poison a little bit more than others, right?
You don't know what someone can tolerate. Some people can be pretty drunk and still be kind of coherent. But there's even at that, they hide it well.
Yeah.
You know, they can be very drunk and it's difficult to tell. At a glance, you go, okay, he's okay. But then you start talking to him and you realize, yeah, he's out of it. He or she is
No,
out of it. They don't know what's going on.
no, and I've seen like just from like, early college life and kind of going out is that you realize that even when people are like that, it's so overlooked because everyone's in a having fun mood. There was one time where I kind of went over on drinks a little bit and it was like funny, but I didn't feel like it was very funny. I felt like I was dying.
Yeah, it's something in our society we don't do a good job of pointing out that there's a difference between having one or two and having 10.
Yeah,
It's a
for
big
sure.
difference.
And you spoke about his friend Craig, and I kind of want to get into how, in a little bit of how this transformed your life and how you turned that pain into purpose. Are you in contact with his friend Craig?
Yeah, I'm in contact with two, three, four, five of his friends, actually on a pretty regular basis. A couple of them were just over a couple of weeks ago. Actually, three of them were just over a couple of weeks ago. When we have our family get-togethers, we still invite them, uh, just because, and they all say that this was a life-changing event for them. Craig is the only one that was there. I think he struggled with it the most.
Okay.
And I talked to him. He's not the kind of person that talks a lot, but we had a conversation about it, and it still bugs him,
Yeah,
right? Because he knows he was there.
I think it's one of those things, it's a traumatic experience, right? It's kind of similar to a lot of people think about like, post-traumatic stress disorder and things like that, but
Yeah,
or they think about war only, but in reality, like it doesn't have to be war that just traumatizes you. There's so many struggles that we deal with, especially grief. I feel like grief can definitely be traumatic for someone.
it is. And since you mentioned it, I'm going to give you my perspective on it.
Yeah.
Um, Grief is an energy. Um, And one of the things for me, and this is going to sound a little harsh, but I think it's the way I look at it. So it's 20 years in the rearview mirror for me, right? But the thing I wanted to do is I wanted to feel the way I did the day before he died. And the reality is you're never going to feel that way again. The old you is gone. The old you died with that person. The new you is there, and you have to define who that is. That old you died with the person you love.
I kind of have an idea of how you felt. And I know for you now, 20 years forward, you have a lot more perspective, but someone can look at you now and be like, you know, wow, he's grown so much from this experience. But this is something that's super hard, like super difficult. And I admire you, Barry, for what you're doing now, and I kind of want to get into that. But if you can kind of share how you felt a little bit after, because I know that it probably took a while, and maybe that someone that's relating to grief can it can help them out as well. I know for example, my grandmother lost her son, my uncle, to cancer last year, and it's kind of like the whole family gives reassurance and things like that, but you take a second to talk to her and you know it's still affecting her. So you know it's something that you can't really rush. So what was your experience with grief and kind of like that process? And how would you recommend that someone else that's maybe going through the same thing just kind of help them out a little bit, give a little perspective on that?
So for me, I was angry with God.
Mhm.
And I told him so in not so nice of words,
Yeah.
because I simply didn't understand why he would take my son instead of me. And
Hmm.
I told him, look, back up time. You're God. You got control of time. Take me and let him live. A couple days later, I had another life-changing event, and I'll do my best to describe it. I was laying in bed. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning. I was wide awake. And I had the sense that someone had walked in the room.
Hmm.
And then there was a light I'd never seen before and haven't seen since. And there was a message. Kevin didn't suffer, and something very good would come from this. And before I knew it, that light was gone. And I'm not here to tell you that it made everything okay, because it didn't. And why God chose me for this, I have no idea, Peter. I have no idea. But it gave me a mission to try to make something very good come from such a senseless tragedy. And it's something, again, back to that grief energy. That's been my focus for the last 20 years, is to try to make something very good come from such a senseless tragedy.
Yeah, and I admire that. I admire that because I think it's so easy to stay in that bitter mindset and just to turn that pain into purpose and to help others. I mean, you got so many people on a daily basis where any little thing throws them off track. Nowadays, like you got my Starbucks order wrong or just small things. And I think there's so many little things that get in our way, but when big things like this happen, usually like the bigger the problem, the bigger the purpose. So I feel
Yeah.
like you're changing people's lives. You're making a big impact, but also kind of correlates to the amount of pain that you had to go through as well.
Yeah. So the other part of this that I think is important to understand. So we had Kevin cremated, and
Okay.
I got a call that I could come and pick up his remains. And I'll never forget going to pick up his remains. You walk in the funeral home, they've got nice pictures on the wall. They're playing music in the background. They take me into an office, sit me down in a big, comfortable chair, the desk in front of me. Funeral director walks in, sets an urn down in front of me. An urn that held all that remained of the kid that I burped, changed his diapers, coached baseball, basketball, soccer, football. I taught him to shoot a gun and swing a golf club. all the remains of him were sitting in an urn in front of me. And there's one thing I knew at that point, and that was that I didn't want to be a victim. Because the world doesn't need any more victims. We've got plenty already. The world needs people who take something bad and they make something very good come from it. And I thought about what I would hope somebody else would do if it happened to their kid. And for me, the answer was pretty easy. It was to get out and tell the story. Not for the money, because there is no money in the world to fix hurt. It doesn't exist. The only thing it helps is to try to make something good come from such a senseless tragedy.
Yeah, and I think that's powerful. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't think this podcast would exist if I didn't go through anxiety and OCD, right? And
Yeah.
at the times when it was really rough, you kind of knew, you're like, hey, like, I got to do something with this, I gotta heal myself, help myself, but then also, why not share that with the world? Because there's people that are going through exactly what you're going through. Sometimes
They
it feels
are.
like you're the only one going through a specific problem. When you're going through grief, you feel like you're the only one going through grief. When you're going through anxiety, you feel like you're the only one going through anxiety. You're going through a breakup, you feel like you're the only only one going
Yeah.
through a breakup. But these are, a lot of us humans, we kind of go through the same struggles, right? And I think that we need to grow from it. And then I think that's our purpose. That's why God put us here, like, to help each other, right?
Yeah.
We can all relate to each other. So
Yeah. I mean, the Bible teaches us that bad stuff's going to happen to us, right? I think it's in James in the first chapter where he says, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. And, they're going to make you a better person. I'm paraphrasing because I don't have that one
yeah.
memorized.
No, I got you.
That's what it says. And the Bible is full of a lot of these things. When you think about Paul, he went through a lot of rough stuff, but he always said, it's making me a better man.
And kind of going into the faith, with you being upset at God, I feel like a lot of people feel that way. Um, I know sometimes I felt confused by God. Like, there's things that happen, I don't understand why. And I'm like, God, can you just tell me why this is happening? Because I don't understand.
Exactly.
Uh, yeah. But how how did you arise over that? How did you get back to a place of faith?
It was that event because
Mm,
it took God for me, and this is just me, but it took him from theoretical to real.
mm.
Because this wasn't a dream. It wasn't anything like this. This was a message from God. It's something that, like I said, it didn't make everything okay, but it gave me something to do. Because again, this grief thing is very common when someone passes away tragically, that families will try to start things and they'll start new organizations. And you have to keep that going because that grief has to go somewhere, right? That's an energy that you have to figure out what to do with it. Just like happiness is an energy, right? You're happy, you're running around the
Mhm,
house, you're doing all these
mhm.
things because you're having a great day. Grief is the same way. You got to figure out what you're going to channel it into.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you're angry, right? Like, probably the best
Yeah,
thing to do is go for a run or go lift some
exactly.
weights.
That's go for a walk, go for a run. And I tell everyone when you do those things, and this is contrary to what people do, but don't wear any headphones
Mm,
because one of the things that I think is lacking is quiet time.
yes,
Because
I
that
agree.
quiet time is when the still small voice shows up and whispers in your ear. Um, Another thing that happened, I was up in Montana out in the Bob Marshall wilderness with my uncle, and we were out in the middle of nowhere. And we were sitting on top of this mountain, and we're just sitting there, right? And I turned to him and I whispered, "Man, it's quiet out here." And he said, "Yeah, and it's got a lot to say."
That's a good one.
Have that quiet time to be able to hear what he wants to tell you. I mean, that's maybe that's my perspective on it.
Agree. I agree 100% because I've noticed that I feel like quiet time is so difficult nowadays unless you carve out space for it because there's some social media, it's a web of opinions, right? It's like God told me to tell you this and
Yeah.
this and that, but every morning I've started like just kind of either going to my balcony or going to the lake in my community and praying like that, or not even praying. Sometimes you can just be in stillness with
Yeah.
God, with nature. It tells you a lot more than you would be getting from random opinions of people on the internet. I'll say that. Yeah.
I 100% agree with that. It's that quiet time. And as the saying goes, if you think God told you something, test it against the Bible. And if it agrees, then you're good, right?
Yep.
But that quiet time, you don't see the benefit of it necessarily. It's hard to measure, but it's surprising how much it makes your day better.
I think it's like the peace. It gives you like a clarity.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to the beach on my birthday, and I haven't been to the beach in a while. And I don't know. I had so much on my mind, like the fact that I turned 33. Um, I was like kind of going not a crisis, but I'm like, oh my God, I'm 33. Like I gotta get things, And then I just
Yeah.
stood by the ocean, and I don't know. It just seemed like everything felt a lot calmer, and I felt God telling me like it's okay. Everything's
Yeah.
going the way it should, you know. So
Yeah. Yep.
so I know that was a situation that you turned pain into purpose, and you're the definition of what this podcast represents, which is arising over obstacles, over things that happen to us in life. So you're doing amazing work now. So if you could tell people exactly the journey of how you turned that pain into purpose, what you kind of started doing. I know you started speaking, sharing your testimony, but if you could just dive a little bit more into what you're doing now and also how that pain to purpose journey unfolded for you.
Yeah. So again, I think it was a God thing. We get his ashes and we have to decide what we're going to do with Kevin's ashes, right? And I had
Right.
grown up in Kalispell, Montana, and Kevin had always talked about wanting to move there someday and buy a ranch. So we decided to take his ashes to Montana, and I suppose the normal thing to do is put them in your car and drive there. But I decided to put them in my backpack and walk 1,400 miles from Gilbert, Arizona to Kalispell, Montana, and tell the story along the way. Because I guarantee you don't ever want to go through this. The idea to walk to Montana, again, is kind of a convoluted thing. One of Kevin's favorite movies was something called Lonesome Dove. It's an old Western, not the miniseries that happened later, but the original movie. It's about a 3-hour movie. It's a
What
Western,
is it?
but it's a good Western.
What is it?
Um,
I'm gonna see if I could watch it. What's it called?
Lonesome Dove.
Okay. Lonesome Dove.
It's yeah, just type in Lonesome Dove. It had Tommy Lee Jones and Robert Duvall in it, which two actors I really liked. In that movie, that I won't give it away in case people want to watch it, but that movie is where the idea came from in my head. I saw that and thought, maybe that's what I'm supposed to do. And originally, and this is where things kind of evolve. Originally, I was just going to walk the Continental Divide. I was just going to go out on my own with a backpack and just walk it and maybe have somebody meet me every now and then with some provisions. But it evolved into telling the story along the way. And obviously with something like this, I wasn't independently wealthy. There was a lot of people that tried to talk me out of it, well-meaning people, because I think they were afraid I was going to fail. And you can't blame them for that, right? you cannot blame people for worrying about that because, this is 90 plus miles a week and doing all this stuff. But I had somebody say something I'll never forget. We were talking about it and I was saying, well, I don't know if I'm going to do it this year. Maybe I'll put it off. And he said, well, how do you think you'd feel about it in 5 years if you don't do it?
Mm.
And for me, that sealed the deal because in life, you're always looking at, well, it'd be kind of tough for me. I'd like to do that, but it'd be kind of tough to do that. But you don't want to look back and go, man, I should have taken that chance when I had that chance.
Can you repeat
And
that? I'm sorry, can you repeat that statement again? That was really good.
how do you think you'd feel about it in 5 years if you don't do it? Because
I
you're
think that
looking at
question is
things
powerful.
and it was for me too. I've never
Mhm.
forgotten it because it
Mhm.
was, well, I don't know, because I mean, I had to try to talk my employer into letting me have time off. And, there's always am I going to get sick? Am I going to get hurt and not be able to do this? Because we were on a schedule that we had speaking engagements set up.
Mhm.
I probably told the story 40 times along the way. We had all that set up and, you're thinking, man, it only takes one little thing to go wrong here. Maybe I shouldn't do this. But again, I think it was a God thing. And I think it was what that guy told me because I'll never forget because you look back on things and go, man, I should have taken a chance and made it
That
happen.
that's powerful. I think God was talking to you in the process, right? I feel like God, obviously, like people, they think they're gonna hear like a big audible voice one day, like, hey, it's me, God, right? But
Yeah.
I think he talks to us through things like, the fact that you saw that movie, and then the fact that you got that confirmation. Like, how would you feel if you didn't do this in 5 years? And I'm sure now you're glad you did it, right?
Huh.
Like to answer
I'm stunned.
that. Yeah,
I look back on it and I tell everyone, well, if a guy like me can pull off something like that, imagine what you can do. I'm not all that creative,
yeah,
but I knew that I wasn't going to be talked out of it. And one of the common questions I got after the walk was, "Did you ever think about quitting?" The answer to that question is no, but I was only a little over 100 miles into it when I wondered if I was going to make it. But I kind of had the wrong mindset because what was inside my head, if you go out running, you know this, inside my head, I'm thinking, I got 3 more states to go through. That's what I was thinking about. And I realized that's the wrong way to look at it. So I blocked all that out mentally and said, I'm going to walk 3 more miles or 4 more miles. I'm going to take a break and I'm going to get up again and do it again. I only focused on the next 3 miles. And for me, it's a great metaphor for life because you don't think you can get to that end goal, but what can you do today to move in that direction? And for me on the walk, it was easy because I can set an hourly goal, right?
yeah.
My goal is to make it another 3 miles and I had blisters, plantar fasciitis. I had a sore knee. I had an ingrown toenail. I had to have surgery on when I got back. There was plenty of that kind of stuff. And again, you think about 3 more states, you're like, man, I can't go that far, but I can walk 3 more miles and then sit for a few minutes and get up and do it again.
Yeah, that's exactly I feel like I was just thinking about that before the podcast because there's so many things that I want to do. And I was having a conversation with my mom literally 2 days ago. And it's exactly that mindset. I was telling her my plans and stuff. She's like, Peter, let me ask you a question. And I'm like, what? And then it was a little weird because she's like, how do you eat an elephant? And I was like, that's so weird. I was like, that's a weird question. And she's like, how do you eat it? I'm like, I don't know. You start at the tail, I guess. And she was like, no, bite by bite,
Yep.
literally bite by bite. And that's what I'm realizing that if we just like you, right? Like, I think if you would have kept thinking about the 3 states, it would have been so overwhelming. And either it would have quit or you would have just been so overwhelmed. But I'm sure that perspective shift for you, it made all the difference.
It did.
Yeah.
It 100% did, because your mom said about the elephant, you got to do it bits at a time and move in the right direction. And eventually you find yourself there and, oh, I just walked to Montana.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I feel like when you think that way too, you enjoy the process more, right? Because if you're always thinking of an endpoint constantly, if you're always focused on just the destination, then you miss out on the beauty of the journey, you know?
It was an incredible journey. We met a lot of wonderful people along the way. Everybody's got a story, and people would stop and tell me, about how it's alcohol or drugs has impacted their lives. We had ladies bring us out brownies and milk, and we would have speaking stuff scheduled, and people would stop, and somebody would stop and say, "Hey, can you speak at the high school right up here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, when do I need to be there?" Right. There was a lot of that kind of stuff that it makes you realize there's a lot of good people in the world.
There
There really
is. Yeah.
is. I know that as a society, we kind of get a little bit jaded about how everybody's a jerk, but you do something like that and you realize there's a lot of wonderful people that just want to help.
Yeah. Sometimes I not to get like political or anything, but sometimes I just watch the news and I live my life and I'm just like a little bit of a disconnect here because there are, like you said, there are a lot of good people. If you're open to it, if you're receptive, I mean, I've met people, amazing people at Target, at
Yeah.
Walmart.
I 100% agree with that. There's just a lot of great people out there that want to be helpful. They want to be part of things. They're just out there. That was probably the funnest thing. Probably the coolest thing that happened. Flagstaff, the way I had to go from Gilbert was, I don't know, 150, maybe 175 miles. And just north of there, I spoke at a high school in Flagstaff. And, I go a few days north of there, so 20, 30, 40 miles north. And his car hits the brakes when it goes by me. And I'm thinking, okay, I'll stop and talk to this guy, because people stopped every day. And he gets out and he said, "Hey, are you the guy that spoke at Flagstaff High School last week?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And he gave me a hug and thanked me, because for the first time, his son came home and told him about what he learned in school today.
And you're making a
Magically, the rest
difference.
of the day, there was no pain. I wrote a book. Writing a book was actually harder than walking to Montana for me. Interesting thing that happened there was I kept a blog. So remember, this is 2007. So Facebook Live and all that stuff was not a thing. And I just kept a daily blog where I told everybody, what happened that day and how it went. And when I got done with it, I told a good buddy of mine, I said, I'm going to print this out and I'll put it in a 3-ring binder. Do you want a copy of it? And he said, no. And I said, well, why not? And he said, you're writing a book. And I said, no, I'm not. But a few years later, probably 2010, 2011, I started writing a book, and it's a difficult thing to do, because writing a book such that a stranger could read it is a challenge, and
And
making it make sense. Stephen King, you know who Stephen King is, right? The horror movie
yes,
guy.
the horror movie guy. Yep.
He wrote a book on writing, and there's a lot of good tips in there, but he explained that writing a book uses 2 parts of your brain. There's the creative part, and then there's the logical part. And so what he would do, and this much what I did, is he would go into his room, close the door, and just start typing a stream of consciousness. Whatever you're thinking about, just type it. And then later, with the logical part, you decide, I'm not even going to use that, or that's going to go here, and this part's going to go there, because there's the logical part of where do you put things, and there's the creative part. And they're two completely different things. And that was really the best advice I got, because I just started typing. And he also said, when you get done, you should be able to cut your book by, what was it, 20 or 30%, because there's a bunch of stuff in there that does not advance the story. And I followed his guidelines, and it was really helpful in understanding how to write a book. Because I encourage, especially addicts that have been through some really crazy stuff. I mean, crazy, murders and around that kind of stuff. I tell them, write it all down.
Yep.
Because someday your kids or grandkids or somebody's going to say, well, what was younger life like for you? What was your life like when you were my age? Here it is. So that they know you didn't live, a cushy life the whole time.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on in people's past to get them to where they are. But I ended up writing a book.
Like, because you didn't have any author experience before this, right?
Absolutely not.
Gotcha. So I could just imagine like how challenging it was. I know I would like to write a book someday, and I just did a little bit of research, and I was like, well, what I'm doing is I'm just journaling, and then, like you said, eventually I'll try to piece a couple things together. But creative process for you, like, how long would that take?
Oh, it probably took me, I was working full time, at least a year,
Okay.
maybe longer, because there would be periods where I flat didn't have any time to work on it. And then I'd need to pick it back up again. Depending upon the day, I might work a little bit on the structure of the book, because the book ended up, I used the blog as part of it and kind of gave my afterthoughts of each day. I had it there, but then I also wrote things that I've thought about since then. But piecing that together and trying to make it, my best advice is you need a stranger to read it. Do not have your family read it, because you know what they're going to tell you?
That's
It's
good.
great.
Yeah.
It all makes
Yep.
sense. It's perfect.
Hmm.
But you need somebody that can give you real criticism. And I had a book club read it. And one of the things I did was, okay, we went around the room and they said, tell me one thing you liked about the book. But that wasn't really why I was there. I said, tell me one thing you didn't like about the book. And that's where all these little things came out. And like, one of the ladies said, you told me more about your decision for what kind of shoes you're going to wear than you told me about how you felt when you finished the walk.
Yeah.
And
So
I
you
was
got
like,
honest feedback. Yeah.
yeah, that's what you need, because like I said, your friends are just going to go, yeah, it's great. Leave it the way it is, which is utter nonsense if you haven't written a book.
Yeah. They'll tell you, oh, you're the best author ever. Like you did,
Yeah.
you did a
Yeah. Oh,
perfect
yeah. You
job.
get all that kind of stuff. Like, no, you didn't even read it.
What's the title of the book? And then also where can people find it?
Yeah. It's Kevin's Last Walk, A Father's Final Journey with His Son. It's on
Okay.
Amazon.
Okay.
If you just go to Amazon and type in my name, Barry Adkins, it'll come up at the top.
Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna read. I'm gonna link it in the bio as well. So if people want to
Okay.
grab it, they can. But yeah, congratulations on putting a book together because I'm sure a lot of people have that vision. I know I have that for myself, but to actually get it done and share your story. And like I said, I think podcasts are great, right? Anyone can go back and watch a video, but books, as we've seen, they last forever.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the Bible. I mean,
Yeah.
what 2,000 years? Imagine they wouldn't have written things down. So I think when we write things down and we
Yeah.
pass it on to provide perspective for people, I think that's powerful.
I think it is too. Give people an idea of what you've been through, and there it is documented. Because I mean, over 20 years, I have heard some crazy stories about people that were going to get murdered when somebody was there. And there was one lady told a story about how to prevent it from happening, she faked like she had an epileptic seizure. And then the guy that was there took off running because she was having a seizure. And just stories like that. It's like, oh my gosh, you need to write this down. That's crazy.
And I do definitely, want to thank you for sharing your story. There is one question that I always ask on the podcast, and it's basically, your story isn't a rise story because you arose over those obstacles and you turned that pain into purpose. What would be your best advice for someone out there who maybe it's not grief, but maybe they're going through something and it's a really painful time in their life? What would you recommend for them to turn that into purpose or turn that energy into something positive?
Well, I'll give you two of my takeaways that every time I tell the story. Adversity. Bad stuff happens to everybody. It just does. The way you respond to adversity is going to define your life. Pain is fertile ground for radical change. Don't waste that pain, man. Don't waste the pain. And the second is about forgiveness. It was easy for me to forgive the guys at the party because this was Kevin's decision, right? This was his choice. And it was easy for me to forgive my kid because that's what parents do.
Yeah.
But there's one person that was pretty hard to forgive, and that was me. It took 1,400 miles and 5 pairs of shoes, but I have found a way to forgive myself. I heard a pastor describe it best once. He said that anger and vengeance are going to lead to one thing: destruction. Forgiveness leads to healing. And sometimes the most important person you need to forgive is yourself. Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. It's the way you handle it that matters.
I don't even know what to say after that. I think I'm gonna have to rewatch the podcast and write those down. Wow, that's powerful, especially the part of forgiving yourself, right? Like
Yeah.
the self criticism. Sometimes we're so egotistical. Like sometimes we think that we're like more qualified or like stronger than we really are, right? But ultimately we're just humans, right? And that's why we need God,
We're going to
right? If
make
we
mistakes.
Yeah, yep. We are not God. We are just people.
Yes.
Awesome, Barry. So Barry, I know, how can people connect more with you? Do you have a website as well?
I do have a website. It's kevinslastwalk.com. And then on
Okay.
Facebook, it's Kevin's Last Walk, all one word. I'm happy to go anywhere and tell the story. I still do it. Believe it or not, I still speak at schools. And if I have to travel, the only thing I charge is travel costs. As I talked about earlier, I'm not in this for the money. I want to make something very good come from it. And I still do it. I still like doing it. The students still listen. It's kind of hard to believe, but they do.
Yeah. I think you're doing great work. Keep up the great work. I think Kevin would be super proud of his dad right now. I think you're doing an amazing job. And yeah, thank you for sharing your story and thank you for being on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me on, Peter.